Hey guys, let's talk about what I just saw. The long-delayed new film from Sony Pictures, Ghostbusters Afterlife, is out in theaters, and it was really bad. Serving as a sequel to the original film, this movie follows Phoebe, a young girl who is asocial but brilliant in her scientific thinking, who, along with her family, moves to the town of Somerville, Oklahoma, as they just so happen to have inherited a creepy old farmhouse owned by her grandfather, with the hopes of starting a new life for themselves. Soon enough, however, strange paranormal events begin to occur all throughout the town, leading to her discovering that her grandfather was in fact Egon Spengler, one of the original Ghostbusters, and that he had been investigating something very ominous in Somerville that could potentially bring about the apocalypse. Honestly, there's really only one kind thing I can say about this film. To their credit, the actress playing Phoebe, the actor playing her new friend Podcast, seriously, he really does go by that name, and Paul Rudd do try to give good performances, even though they're given nothing to work with. Honestly, these three deserve to be in a much better movie than the one they're stuck in. Unfortunately, I can't really go into all the problems this film has without spoiling major parts of it. So skip to this part if you just want to hear my final verdict. First of all, the film is way too pandering to people who grew up in the 1980s. Not only is Podcast quite frankly the type of quirky sidekick character you would have had in a film like The Goonies, but you also have Paul Rudd's character showing his summer school students VHSs of 80s horror movies, I guess for the hell of it. And the moment from all the trailers of the mini Stay Puft Marshmallow Men on the loose really comes off as a bad attempt to rip off Gremlins. Pretty much, this movie was in essence 80s nostalgia porn, and not really in a good way. The film also, let's face it, is a blatant rip-off of Stranger Things, and the explanation as to why this particular Ghostbusters film is taking place in Oklahoma, that the town happened to be built around a mysterious mind owned by the infamous Ivo Shandor from Ghostbusters lore, really comes off as random, bad fanfiction. And while the actress playing her clearly was trying, unfortunately, Phoebe comes across as just another bad nerd stereotype, given how ridiculously asocial and emotionally reserved she is. I realize that she's supposed to be like Egon, but here's the thing, Egon was not an emotionless robot in those original films. Also, the other characters in this film that I haven't mentioned yet just aren't very good in it. Phoebe's mother, for her part, is just a one-note emotionally distant mother for most of the film. Phoebe's brother is also a very disappointingly one-note, too cool for this teenage character, which is a real shame because the actor playing him showed that he's actually a really damn good actor in the It movies. Also, the brother's, I guess, love interest, since the movie barely touches on that, really has no personality and really feels like she's there just as a token character, which is especially frustrating considering how in the other Ghostbusters films, the so-called token characters actually had personality to them. The film also has very little logic to it, as it tries to present Gozer's attack on New York City in the original film as something that was somehow not extensively documented, even though you'd think people would remember when a 100-foot Marshmallow Man attacked New York City, and was an event that the people just forgot about, leaving the Ghostbusters to fall into obscurity. Oh, you heard me right. This film effectively retcons Ghostbusters 2, and yet still has the same bullshit setup that film had. Even better, the film tries to outright claim that in the years since the Gozer attack in the original film, no other paranormal activity has been recorded. What do you have to say to that, Egon?
New people die every day.
The film also has a ton of reference jokes to the original films that are just so blatantly lazy. There's other questionable leaps of logic in the film, such as how the town has Wi-Fi, but somehow no cellular access. The film also randomly uses motifs from the original movie score without any real rhyme or reason. Additionally, the film has some really tasteless humor that should have stayed in the 1980s. This is also one of those films where the terrible thing that's happening is all the protagonist's fault. The film also inexplicably doesn't have much variety in either the ghosts or the ways in which they're busted. Such variety, I would point out, is one of the things that everyone agreed was actually a good thing about the remake. The film also moves at a glacial pace, taking way too long before anything resembling ghostbusting actually happens in it. And get this film, unlike the actual remake, does straight up do the story of the original film again. The great threat in this film, no joke, is Gozer again. They don't even have Gozer come back in a new way. Gozer pretty much comes back in the exact same way as the original film. No joke, I'm talking the Keymaster and the Gatekeeper possessing humans again and literally summoning Gozer by joining their bodies. Gozer even pretty much looks the same as in the original film, just this time being played by a pointlessly stunt-casted Olivia Wilde. Speaking of stunt casting, they also have J.K. Simmons portray Ivor Shandor, even though he only has one line of dialogue in the entire movie, and is pretty much a pointless cameo character. Also, the return of the original Ghostbusters, the one thing about this film that had people really excited, is pretty much just a lazy Deus Ex Machina during the climax. Finally, probably the worst thing about this film is how it actually handles the character of Egon Spengler. First of all, the film rubs it in our face that Harold Ramis is no longer with us by showing Egon get brutally murdered by one of Gozer's minions in the beginning of the film. Also, for a film that claims to be a love letter to Harold Ramis, the film in actuality just shits on the character. First of all, we're pretty much told that he was pretty much a deadbeat father who abandoned his family and his fellow Ghostbusters in order to track down this other portal that Shandor created thousands of miles from New York City. Also, we are told frequently that he was a very panicky, paranoid guy about preventing another apocalypse, even though, quite frankly, that would be something more fitting for the Ray character. Because, let's face it, out of all the original Ghostbusters, great as they are, it probably would make the most sense for Ray to become an emotional basket case. Oh sure, the film tries to have its cake and eat it too by showing that Egon did care about his family while he was in exile, but the point remains that it makes no sense that he would separate himself from everyone. I mean, let's face it, that would be more of a Venkman thing to do. To top it all off, they have a CGI ghost Harold Ramis appear at the end of the movie to help Phoebe save the day, and vaguely smile at everyone before he crosses over. Because as we all know, the ghosts in Ghostbusters never talk or make any vocal sounds. Wait. With all this in mind, I'd give Ghostbusters Afterlife a D. It only avoids getting a worse grade because A, some of the actors in it are trying, and B, there exists a much better follow-up to the original two films. Honestly, this feels like a cheap direct-to-video Ghostbusters movie, not a Ghostbusters movie I should be paying full theater price to watch. Please remember to like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell. Also, follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, and Twitter, and if you have any spare change, there is my Patreon and my coffee. By the way, special thanks to Patreon supporter L'Oreal McNabb. I'll see you next time.